Hey everyone, how's everyone doing today? Welcome to my photo chat live stream where we come together as a community and talk about photography. And as always, I like the audience to drive the conversation. So if you have any questions or any topics you wanted to talk about, I'll do my best to address them or answer them here live for you. And I also like to, talk about what I've been up to this week and share with you what might be educational or lesson learned type things because I try to go out and do as much as I can every week, photographing and uh, you know uh, fine tuning my techniques and things. And so this week, a couple of things. I've been fine tuning my bird and flight type settings or birding in general, and also some of my photo editing. I put out a on my website some presets for Photolab 9. So uh, it's available free, and I'll show you where that is. And as always, I take donations and memberships and all that good stuff. There'll be links down below for all that. If you want to support the work that I do here, it's all greatly appreciated. So that said, let me check in, see who's here. And I see John is here. Good morning. Good to see you. And Anthony from Newfoundland. Yeah, good to see you, Anthony. And Anthony says it would not bother me in the next flagship from OM system only had an extra 4 million pixels over the current OM1 Mark II. Yeah, a little more wouldn't hurt if as long as there's no compromise in image quality. But I think it's generally agreed we've kind of plateaued with the current sensor technology that's available to consumers. And I thought I heard a rumor about a GH8 or something coming out with a global shutter. So we'll see. That would be interesting. That would be a nice update. Um, and Anthony continues, I would not be one bit disappointed if the new OM1 Mark III only had a 24 megapixel stack sensor with all of the new, more powerful imaging processor. Extra 4 megapixel is quite fine. It's quite significant improvement. I think there's a fair argument that it's not going from 20 to 24. Uh, I don't know what if they did, that would open up maybe some on the video side. There are some benefits, right? You can do open gate, 6K video and things. But on the photography side, an extra 4 megapixels. Yeah, I just don't see it. We're talking about maybe 2 by 2. It would help a little, but not much. I mean, because I look at images from the G9 Mark II and OM1, side by side all the time from the photo editing stream when they get submitted and edit them. And honestly, you really don't see any difference. I know it's not a controlled test where you put the sensors side by side, but DP Review has done that. And you can look at the image quality from the G9 Mark II and the OM1 and just put them side by side in a controlled testing environment. You can see there's not that much difference, but maybe we'll do that here live for you. And I'll show you what I mean. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've done it before and I didn't see much benefit. And Larry, good morning. And good morning, Paul. Good to see you. All down in Fort Myers area taking some birding this week. I'm not missing my Z8 at all. It's been getting great results with the OM1 Mark II and 50 to 200 with the 1.4. Nice. Wow, that's a heck of a lens, that 50 to 200. I've been shooting my probably, I've been shooting this 50 to 200. I might have a couple images I can show from this. I haven't processed them yet. But this is my old E620 with a 50 to 200. And I did a couple of shots, I think, on my OM1 with this lens that I can share. And, oh, you have a polar bear in town. Not sure if I missed the chance of taking a photograph. Okay. All I know is you stay as far away as from polar bears as possible. And it was caught on somebody's security cam. Okay. And Jeff is here. Good to see you. And Uh, Good morning, Darko. Good to see you. And Raphael, good to see you. Hello. And we are still cold here in central Canada, -5 degrees. God, -5 Celsius. Yeah, still in the 20s. So AVL good. Thank you, Jeff. I should always do a sound video check before I start, right? But I appreciate that. And good morning, Roger. Good to see you. Good to see you, Julio from Florida. And what's the temperature down there right now? I would imagine it's still early morning, but you're probably easily in the 60s and 70s by now. And good morning, Hesse. Good to see you. And Lon, good to see you. Lon was in my photo editing stream recently, first time, I believe. And good morning, the great Vanzini. And John says, I have an EM1 original, but the internal battery won't keep its charge. Can I plug it into Workspace while charging the main battery? No. You need a good battery. The original EM1, if I recall, that only has a USB, micro USB. Let me just double check. But this uses the same battery as the Pen F, or vice versa. The Pen F uses the same battery as the original EM1. This might not even have the micro USB. I think this has the older, even older than that, USB port. It might be proprietary. Yeah. So there's no way to charge and connect a Workspace at the same time on these older cameras, as far as I know. So you're gonna have to get a new battery and charger if you don't have a charger already. And hello, Raphael. And Darko says, going out today with a big gun today, the 200 to 500 f5.6 and the 1.4 TC with the Z5 Mark II, making a 1000 equivalent. Wow. Yeah, 1000 is nice. I typically shoot at 840, but that's usually enough reach, but sometimes it's not, right? I still have to crop in quite a bit for some birding. But it'll be interesting to see your results. Let me know how they work out for you. Because that's the Z50 Mark II, not the Z50. So the Z50 Mark II is a 20 megapixel APS-C sensor. So yeah, I think you'll get great results with that, actually, because the pixel density is not too dense, unlike a lot of APS-C sensors. Like Fujifilm has 26 megapixels up to 40 megapixels on theirs, and the Canon APS-C, some are like 33 megapixels, right? So I would imagine, because part of the perceived image quality of a image when you have a camera lens combination is the pixel density. So when the pixel density is too high, it starts picking up a lot of the imperfections or defects, or in other words, reaching the limits of how much the lens can resolve. So it might start to look a little soft. You start picking more chromatic aberrations, etc., etc. So so that's a nice combination. That the APS-C 20 megapixel from Nikon is such a good sensor. They've been using it basically since the D500, back in the DSLR days. And it was very impressive back then, and even more so today, right? And thank you, Robin Wong, for the EM1 idea. I'm not familiar with what Robin Wong idea he gave for the EM1. Please elaborate. And good morning. I saw your recent post with your E620. I recently got an E420. I forgot how good the battery life is and how nice the DSLR shutter sounds. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It's a little bit nostalgic, but what's nice is, even with this relatively big lens. You know, the camera body itself is very, very small. The E620, the E420 are very similar in size. And the E620, I think, was it their last DSLR? I'm not sure. It might be, but it has everything. I can tell you the the autofocus performance, well, is fine, but the continuous autofocus and high-speed shutter, that leaves a little bit to be desired, as would to be expected in such an old camera. And good morning, Adrian. Good to see you. And Peter says, I hope the OM system ambassadors are going to secure you a free out. Right. They don't even get them free themselves. I don't think they even get a discount on the 150 to 400. They get discounts typically on other gear. I don't know how it is now, but if I remember, initially when you become an ambassador, you can buy everything you can buy everything you want the first time, or if there's a new release, right? But anything in the existing inventory you can buy once at a discount. So, you know, let's say I buy an OM1 Mark II and a 40 to 150 f2.8, and I don't do anything else, I'll get those at some discount. Might be 20%, might be 50%, but it's not free. I know that. I don't know what the percentage is. And then if I want to later buy the 12 to 40 f2.8, it's on me to pay. You know, I would have to pay full price because I didn't buy it on the initial offer. And then some lenses, I believe, were exempt. I'm pretty sure the 150 to 400 was exempt to any kind of discount because it's in such limited quantities. I mean, being an OM system ambassador has some perks to early access and opportunities to do events and things where you could make some money, but they don't get paid directly, right? Anything, and they're not given free gear. They're given loans a lot of times, sometimes, you know, indefinite, I guess, but for the most part, there's no significant advantage to being an OM system ambassador that I couldn't do on my own, right? Other than the initial discount. But I could be wrong, and it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. If all the ambassadors got all free gear, it's okay. It's fine by me. As long as they're using it, putting it to good use and sharing their experience and knowledge, it's well worth it. And DJI is using a 43 sensor with the 100 megapixel. OM could put a quad bear on this sensor to give MFT sensor with 25 megapixels. Possibly. I'm not familiar with what sensor that is, right? But it's not, you know, the fabrication of these sensors, I mean, we're kind of going into territory I shouldn't be talking about because I don't know anything, right? I'm not an expert by any means, but my basic understanding is it's not a simple conversion of taking a sensor designed for a particular purpose and apply it to another application. A lot has to do with the wiring and things that they do on the sensor, and then you have to design a processor to process the data that comes out of that sensor. So there's so many sensors out there for different purposes, but you know, OM spent a lot of time developing their, I forget what they call them, their digit, that's Canon. Anyway, OM Systems spend a lot of time developing the processor and the coding and everything to work with the current sensors that they use. And to get a new sensor would require, you know, basically a lot of research and development to get the most out of the new sensor. So even if they came out with a great sensor, and there are some great sensors out there, it's a matter of R&D on Olympus's side, or I'm sorry, OM Systems side, to develop the processing engine, which is, the software and hardware to use that chip. Because, say Sony, for example, has no responsibility. They'll just say, okay, we have a chip here. It'll do 120 frames per second 8K video. It's 40 megapixels, and it's in a micro four thirds format. If you and we can crank these out at so many units per day, minimum order quantity. They have their own business models, and for OM System to be ready, right, to be able to develop, they have to be able to develop the coding and processing for that chip. So it takes a bit of time. And the temperature in Florida, yeah, 75. I knew it. I knew it'd be up there. And Thomas is here. Good to see you. He says hello to the fellow trekkers checking in from Decatur, Georgia, USA, where it's glorious spring morning. 8 degrees Celsius, so I would imagine that's what, 40s or 50s? I thought it'd be warmer than that. But yeah, 32 Celsius, yeah, that's up there. We were over 90 degrees, and I think in Fahrenheit. We were over 90 degrees a couple of days. It was hot, but it wasn't humid, so I really enjoyed it. I was out, I mowed the grass, I did some yard work, and then I went out on some photo walks. I was really enjoying the high 80s and 90-degree temperature. And ATR Bear, good morning, good to see you. I'm sorry, Raphael says, how do you recommend cleaning the sensor? I'm selling an A7 IV, and when at F16 I noticed so much dust. I think noticed that the OM cameras handle dust much better. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't have to clean my OM system camera sensors uh, hardly at all. I mean, I might do one of my cameras once a year, if that. I can't remember the last time I cleaned a sensor. And by cleaning, I mean using one of those little cleaning kits where you get like a little brush or swab, and you put a drop or two of sensor cleaner on it, and you clean the sensor. I usually just use an air blower and blow it out. That's all I do. So if you have an air blower, try blowing it out. If the sensor still has spots on it, meaning the whatever was on the sensor couldn't be just simply blown off with an air blower, then you'll need to resort to a sensor cleaning kit. And they're available online. There's a lot on there, and there's some good tutorials on YouTube on how to do that. It's pretty straightforward. You just buy the sensor swab that's the right diameter for your sensor, and when you buy the swabs, they'll tell you it's full frame APS-C, micro four thirds. And it'll usually come with a couple of sensor cleaning drops, and that's all you need to do. Looks like I missed my chance to photograph the polar bear that was in town. Ooh, yeah. That's like a lot of things though, right? It's like these opportunities just come and go very quickly. And good morning, this side towards screen. Good to see you. And JP Steiner, thank you so much. Down payment on the 150 to 400. That's a good start. I'll start anywhere, right? Oh my God, that lens is going for $8,000 or $9,000 right now, and on the used market, it's still like 7,000. I don't think that'll ever be in reach for me. I just don't see it happening outside of winning a lottery or something. And Darko says, does a cotton carrier hold a lens like a 200 to 500 where it can easily be clipped on and off? I don't know. I've never used one. Yeah, sorry, I can't speak to that. I've never used a cotton carrier. And Anthony says, once the wildlife and RCMP close the section of town off, it's usually near impossible to see one. They're doing it forever by safety. They can be very dangerous. Yeah, that's what I hear. Polar bears are not to be approached, or if you see one, go the other way. Are there cotton carrier alternatives that are cheaper? I sorry, I can't address. I've never shopped for them. Um, and even if I see cheaper alternatives, I don't have a way to compare, right? I could help you more with that. TruePix, yeah, the TruePix. TruePix 10, I think, is what they're on now. The processor in our OM system cameras. And the Gray Vancini says the Nikon D3500 and D5600 are still my two faves. The D7200 too, but it's bigger and heavier. All 24 megapixels. The Z50s hold up well at 20 and maybe a pinch better even. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, kind of splitting hairs there, really, between those four cameras you mentioned. The D7200 is a really nice camera. You know, because I used to have a D7100, and the D7200 solved a few of the issues that the 7100 had. You know, deeper buffer specifically, because that was a constant problem for me when I was birding with that camera. And then the banding in the shadow areas, if you try to pull them up, there was definitely banding in very high contrast, you know, particularly in the shadows, there was banding. Those are the two major issues that the D7200 solved. And, but, you know, I had since jumped ship. You know, I bought a D750 when my D7100 broke. And then I only used the D750 for a year or two before I pretty much switched over completely to Micro Four Thirds. And Heather is here. Good morning, Rob. There are a number of ambassadors in your neighborhood this week in Alexandria. Did you get a chance to meet up with them? I did. Very randomly, in fact. I was out doing my normal photo walk, and then I hear somebody calling my name, and I turn around, and there's like three of the ambassadors right there. They got a tip about the location, because I like to go to Bellhaven Park, and one of their customers or clients, I guess is the right word, gave them a tip about Bellhaven to go there. So they're in town this weekend, and before their workshop started, they wanted to check it out. And I like to go to Bellhaven quite often, because there's a lot of small birds there, and then of course there's the osprey and bald eagle. They're residents there, and but yeah, and swallows, all kinds of little birds. I'll share some pictures I took yesterday. In fact, let me see if I can pull it up. Yeah, I ran into them, so I took a picture of us. This is with my OM3 and a flash, right? The fill-in flash. But yeah, so this is Frank Smith and Tom. I can never pronounce his last name, and then Chris McGinnis. You know, he's been on my show a couple of times. Tom has been on, and Frank has been on at least once, maybe twice, in some of my live streams. And yeah, they're all really amazing photographers. Frank has traveled basically all over the world and loves architectural photography. Tom does a lot of wildlife and birding. And then, of course, Chris is really expert at macro. And then, I'm kind of a jack of all trades, right? I try to do everything. None of it particularly as good as I want. But so that was that. And let's see. This is a shot I took. Yeah, this is the 300 f4 and the OM3. I got a couple of different shots of this swallow. And then here's a couple of, these are bald eagles, but they're the little babies. So I got them. This is heavily cropped. This is less than 1 megapixel. It's 0.84 megapixels. But they were pretty far away, and I was at 840 millimeters. And then this one here is the Osprey. It's just kind of funny. He's holding one wing out. So I tried to make a meme. Nobody thought this was very funny. I did. But he's holding out his wings sort of like, those guys with the trench coats that show, that are selling watches and jewelry. It just kind of reminded me of that. But yeah, this was my 300. And of course, the detail is amazing out of that combination. This is the 300 f4 also, I believe. Yeah. And 300 f4. This is heavily cropped as well. Well, not too much. But what's interesting, it's hard to see, but if I zoom in, look at all these bugs up here. It's crazy how many bugs are there. It's probably mosquitoes. I don't know. I don't know if that's showing up in the stream or not. That's crazy. Probably gnats. Here's another one I took. I've been experimenting a little bit with high key images. So this is another high key image. And so that's one I did. Here's another one I did. I tried a couple of variations of this. But I thought these were kind of interesting. I don't know. It kind of happened by accident because I was trying to expose for the subject, the bird. And then I ended up blowing out everything else. And I said, that actually looks pretty cool. And of course, I'm not the first one to do this, right? Obviously, but this is the first time I've kind of tried to embrace it and say, forget about preserving the highlights. Just go high key and try to expose. Now, you run into problems, of course, with high key images with glaring, because usually the light source is going directly into the lens, so you have to deal with flare. But some of these came out okay. I was pretty happy with that. And then here's another one. This Osprey just flew right overhead. So all three of us were there, or four of us, I should say, were, I kind of gave them a little tour of Belhaven because they weren't familiar with it. So I said, oh yeah, the bald eagle nest is over here. The osprey nest is over here. This is where some swallows are. This is where, you can get a good angle for this. And let's go over here. This particular path gets us closest to the nest. If we go out to this deck, we might get a better angle. Because, I go there quite often. So they really appreciated that I was able to give them a little, be their guide to Belhaven Park. Okay, and Palumbo's here. Good morning. And TG6 versus TG7 recommendations. I would just get a TG7 because it has the USB-C port if you don't have one now. But I think for all intents and purposes, there's not much difference between the two. The primary thing is being just that it's a USB-C port. There might be some other things in there. I'm not familiar with the TG series quite as much. The nuances between going from, say, the TG5 to the TG6 to the TG7. Spec-wise, I don't think they're any different. They're 12 megapixel sensors. 1/2.3 size and same ISO range, same 4K video. Spec-wise, they're pretty identical. There's just nuances in the menus and capabilities. If I'm trying to remember, like between the TG5 and the TG6, they added something to make the focus stacking a little easier. I think they added like and this is what I mean, it's very subtle. They added like a shutter delay before the focus stacking begins. Something like that. So they added some very, very minor tweaks between the cameras. So TG7, if you don't care about USB-C, and you can find a TG6 for, say, half the price of a TG7, I would just go TG6, right? Because all the accessories and everything are the same. I'm trying to think. I mean, you have to make that decision, right? What's going to be the best value for you? But I'd argue you could even go TG5. That's what I use. But a TG6 is they did add a couple of nice things in the firmware that made it easier to use for certain things. I just can't remember off the top of my head what they are. Uh, and I'm sure TG7 has some additional tweaks or additions in the menu. But I would stick with the cheaper of the two. And Heather says, cold front just came through Atlanta last night, 53. Yeah, we were 50 something this morning. Right now we're 53, according to my thing. And I think that's going to be the high for the day. It's 53 for us. And Marco, I was just thinking about that. Good morning. It has been a while. I'm good to see you back. I hope everything's okay. Um, and did you see the information about the new 1-inch sensor that has 19 stops of dynamic range, over 50 megapixels, which intended for cell phone? I did see a little bit of that. I forget the technology they call it, but it's similar. It's basically Sony has branded that technology as Starvis. And that 19 stops of dynamic range primarily applies to the video side. And of course, correct me if I'm wrong, right? But it primarily applies to the video side where, let's say you're recording at 30 frames per second. That's what's recorded to the memory card. But what's happening in practice is it's actually recording at 60 frames per second. And it's recording one frame at a higher exposure and then another frame at a lower exposure. And then in camera, they combine those two frames to make a 30 frame per second video. And that's how they expanded the dynamic range. It's not that the sensor natively captures that dynamic range of 19 stops. It's actually created in camera by taking multiple exposures and combining them. So HDR, right? But it's done primarily in video. I believe that's how the technology works. I could be wrong though, but I just kind of skimmed the article when I saw it. But I think that's how it works. I think for still photos, it may do the same thing, sort of like my similar to what my Insta360 camera does, where it can do HDR photos in real time. You take one picture and I'm not sure how my Insta360 does it, but essentially they probably do the same thing as they take two shots in rapid succession or three shots in rapid succession and combine them in camera as a regular HDR shot. But I think that's what's going on. Definitely on the video side, that's what they're doing. And Henning says, did my morning walk, dog terrorizing me, did my morning walk without her. Now she claims her right empathetically. I'll continue watching later. Okay, Henning. Yeah, take care of your puppy. You know, as as human beings, we have a lot of options to go out and do things, right? If we want to go out and do some photography, or if we want to go out to a party, go visit some friends, your dog, all they have is you, right? Who else are they going to rely on to do all those things? So I always try to make time for Ellie. And Randall says, do you have any recommendations for interesting, unique budget lenses for the OM1? Okay. So I think budget lenses, I'm gonna assume that means like 200, under $200, right? We have to kind of set some threshold to call it a budget. Budget can mean a lot of things, right? But I think a couple of interesting lenses are the two body cap lenses that Olympus has. The 9mm body cap and the 15mm body cap. The 9mm body cap is surprisingly sharp lens, easy to use, and super compact. The 15mm lens, not as sharp. In fact, it's not great, right? It's a little bit soft, but not in a low contrast kind of way, but just kind of in a mushy way. You know what I mean? Because I think the lenses are made of plastic, but whatever. The 15mm is not very sharp, but it's also very, very compact. It's basically a body size of a body cap. I don't know where mine is, but uh, those are two really interesting lenses that are pretty cheap. I remember paying like $30 for my 15mm, and I paid, I think, $60 for my 9mm. They were like on some kind of outlet sale. Though those are two really good lenses to play with, and the 9mm fisheye, it's basically has a just distortion. Uh, that's it's I love wide angle photography. So when you say unique, I think super wide angle and fisheye lenses are always interesting. So true circular fisheye lenses, there's also one, it's a 4mm. That one is less than 200. Let me see if I can find that one real quick. I think, yeah, this one. This one from Seven Artisans is really good too. Uh, the Seven Artisans 4mm f2.8. So if we go to, let's see, fisheye, we should be able to find, yeah, here's some photos I took using that lens. But this will give you a nice full circular fisheye. And how much was this lens? $149. That's a really cool lens. You can do a lot of interesting things with this. I should have a good astro shot in here. Yeah, this one. Or, yeah, live comp shot. So, yeah, I have fun with this. So, that's kind of the direction I'd send you towards is there's a lot of very budget-friendly super fisheye lenses. I just reviewed a 6mm fisheye for Micro Four Thirds. I can't remember which brand it was, but that was really good. It's on my channel. You'll see a 6mm fisheye. Let me just look it up real quick. Hello. Gosh, sometimes it is it's also a 7 Artisan 6mm f2. So if we do 6mm, this one's a bit more expensive, but this lens is pretty sharp. But this is not like a circular fisheye. This is just a super wide angle with lots of distortion, right? But this is a very, very sharp lens. It's very good, and they have it for Micro Four Thirds here and many other mounts. So to me, by saying unique, that's kind of where I'd send you towards. Other unique lenses that you might want to explore, some manual focus macro lenses, right? So I have this one here. This is a 20 millimeter f2 4.5x macro, and this is available for micro four thirds. This is a really interesting lens. So there you have it, super wide and super close, right? Those are really good budget lenses that you can get. This one goes on sale time to time for 120 bucks. It's on sale a lot at 150, and I think the regular price is like 300. Never pay that. I wouldn't pay more than 150 for this lens. If you can get it for less, maybe you can find a used copy for under $100. But this is a really good lens. This one is called, let me see if I can, B&H sells it. Yeah, this one. So this is the one for B&H. Oops, sorry. This one here, it's available in other mounts too, but you can get it for this price pretty much all the time. 149. It was on sale last week for 119, and I posted it on my community page, you know, when this went on sale. But this is a pretty cool lens, and there's other macro. There's some other generic macro lenses here. Of course, I guess I should type in the whole thing, macro lens. Yeah, so there's that one. This one here for 179. This is a little bit more normal. Very similar to our 60 macro from OM Systems, but it's manual focus. So this will give you very similar, excuse me, magnification. So just off the top of my head, those are the two directions I would go: super wide, fisheye, or macro. And then those two pancake lenses give you give you a lot of interesting options. I'm catching a little bit of a cold, so you have to excuse me. Okay, and Darko says, I still have my D600. I still have the D600 and a D80 CCD sensor type cam. The D80 is pure black and white street. Yep, I have a D80. I never shot it in black and white though. And Heather says, all sporting the 5200. Did you get to try it out? They were actually, from that photo I was showing earlier, that was actually, they were all shooting the 150 to 400. Yeah, maybe the 150. No, I didn't. I had my 300 f4 with 1.4x teleconverter, so I was pretty close to what you could get with the 150 to 400 anyway, because the 150 to 400 has a teleconverter built in, so you can be at 500 millimeters f5.6, and then you can throw a 1.4 TC on top of that if you want to get carried away. But you know, at some point, atmospheric distortion and other things just kind of mitigate any reason to go much beyond the 1,000 millimeter equivalent. But I didn't try it. I was, you know, I've tried that lens before, and it's awesome. I would love to get one, but it's just way out of my budget, especially now. Anthony says, is there any truth to that 20 megapixel micro four thirds is equivalent to 80 megapixel full frame sensor? Phone system was to use a higher resolution sensor, the pixel pitch would be too small. Yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges is, you know, when you start making the pixels too small, you know, you get higher noise levels per pixel, right? And that's, that's the problem, right? So let me see if I read this right. Is there any truth to the 20 megapixel micro four thirds equivalent 80 megapixel full frame? So what the basic idea of that, and I don't know if the math is 100% accurate, but it's close enough. A full frame sensor has 4 times the surface area of a micro four thirds sensor, right? So if we take let me see if I can get a clear screen. So if we take a 17 times, I forget what it is exactly, 13 point, let's just say 17 by 13. That's 220 square millimeters, right, for a micro four thirds, and it's 36 by 24 for a full frame. So a full frame is 864 square millimeters. So divide that by 4, you get 216, right? So we're back to micro four thirds in terms of sensor space, right? Or surface area. So that's where the idea comes from, is that you can, if you have 4 times the surface area, you can have 4 times as many pixels. So you go from 20 to 80. So that's just basic math. And then the second part of that is, if OM Systems was to use a higher resolution sensor, the pixel pitch would be too small. Well, it's all relative, right? What do you mean by too small? Too small for what, right? I mean, cell phone cameras have really very high pixel pitches. There's a challenge. Why are people keep texting me? There is a oh, I see what's going on. Okay. So there's a challenge of the wavelength of light has a certain frequency, right? And if the pixel pitch is too high, you're not going to get, let's take red, green, and blue wavelengths of light, all coming in at different frequencies, right? And a lens has to be able to direct all of those wavelengths of light onto a single pixel. So the finer the pixel pitch, the harder it is to get all 3 wavelengths of light to hit that sensor, or to hit an individual pixel, right? So just imagine, you have a bow and arrow and you're trying to hit the bullseye, right? And the bullseye is, say, this big. So you take your arrow and shoot, right? You take 3 arrows at a time and shoot 3 at a time, maybe. I don't know. This is probably a terrible analogy. But you're trying to hit a thing like this, so you design a lens that will make the light hit a bullseye of this size, the bullseye being a pixel. But if suddenly you make the bullseye this size, it's going to be harder for you to design a lens that can hit the pixel. And the smaller and smaller it gets, right, the harder it is to direct all 3. And that's where you start to get chromatic aberrations and softness, because not only do you have to be able to direct the light onto a small pixel, it all has to hit at the same time, right, for sharpness. So it's a lot of things involved. And that's why a lot of people talk about, can the lens resolve these high resolution sensors? So Fujifilm said, okay, so we went from a 26 megapixel sensor to a 40 megapixel sensor. Half our lenses aren't able to resolve the 40 megapixels. So these are the lenses that we approve for use on our 40 megapixel sensor, because they have the ability to resolve, or the ability, in other words, to direct all wavelengths of light onto a single pixel. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think the pixel pitch at 20 megapixels is still finer than a 40 megapixel Fujifilm, right? I'm not sure though. Pixel pitch, Fujifilm. The pixel pitch is 3.04 micrometers, or whatever that symbol means. And a 20 megapixel Olympus is 3.34. Oh, so actually the 40 megapixel is actually a little bit finer. It's a little bit finer on the Fujifilm 40 megapixel sensor. It even has a higher pixel pitch, or pixel density, I should say. Okay, whoops, that's not for me, but Tom is recommending the DJI 15mm 1.7 can be found usually really cheap, and it's a nice lens. I've heard that, yeah. The DJI version can be a little cheaper. I think the trick is a couple of things you want to look out for. Just confirm it. I can't say for sure. But there's no firmware updates on the lens that you can download from, say, Panasonic for it. And then the other thing is, I don't know if you're using it on a Panasonic camera, I don't know if the depth from defocus, the contrasted depth, autofocusing, particularly the depth from defocus technology. Now it'll autofocus, right? But to take advantage of the depth from defocus algorithms, I don't know if the DJI lens does that on Panasonic cameras. So just double check those two things. And Anthony says, and cause image quality problems by making pixels too small. It looks like this company that developed the 1-inch sensor found a way of getting around it. I don't know. I mean, that a 50 megapixel 1-inch sensor like I have, it's not too different than my Insta360. My Insta360 is a little smaller than the Type 1. I think calling it 1-inch sensor is not accurate. I think they call it Type 1. But in any case, mine is a 1.3 inch, 1 over 1.3. So it's even smaller than a Type 1 sensor. And I wouldn't say that they got around things. Because when I pixel peep the 50 megapixels out of my little Insta360, a lot of times it's not as sharp as my 20 megapixel OM system camera. The problem I have in comparing them directly is I don't have a lens with a field of view, that matches the Insta360. My 8mm fisheye is pretty close, so I could probably do a comparison between those two. But I don't know exactly how. Well, let me back up. I can tell you that I've seen very high resolution images from very small sensors, and they are never as good as what we get out of our 20 megapixels cameras. So but I haven't done enough comparisons to be able to tell you or to show you any examples. But I can tell you anecdotally from what I've seen, going 50 megapixels on a tiny sensor just doesn't really give you any significant resolution boost. Oh, thank you, Heather. I appreciate that. And Anthony says, do you think they would be possible they could introduce a 28 megapixel stack sensor in a new flagship camera? I just want to see OM systems move forward and give us users some confidence. Anything's possible, but why 28? 28 doesn't really give any advantage, right, to the Micro Four Thirds system. Right now, I feel like the market, you have to check a lot of video boxes. 28 megapixels wouldn't check any of those boxes. You need to go to at least 33 megapixels if you want to get 8K video. Just like the Fujifilm has a 40 megapixel sensor, so now they can offer 8K video in Fujifilm APS-C cameras. So I just, unfortunately, I don't think 28 megapixels or 24 megapixels is going to move the needle for OM systems at all. They can stick with 20 megapixels. I don't think they'll sell one more camera because it has more megapixels. That's not their problem. The problem is not their specs, right? Just introducing, if they introduce a 28 megapixel camera and it bombs, what difference does it make that it was 28 megapixels, right? So they need to be able to really connect with their user base and new users that might be interested in their particular genre, which is sports action wildlife. They are expanding that to more street urban type photography, like with the OM3, potentially a new pen. They're gonna go back into those areas, but I don't think saying that this pen camera has a new 28 megapixel sensor is going to sell one more camera than it would if it was a 20 megapixel sensor. Think about companies, I mean, an extreme would be like Leica, Why on earth would anybody pay $5 or $6 grand for a Leica Q3 with the 60 megapixel sensor when you can do the same thing for half the cost with the Sony A7R2 and pick your 28 millimeter lens, any G Master lens. But there's an appeal to Leica, and people are buying a certain image and luxury. They're buying a certain aesthetic and image, and they're, it's a brand tax. They're paying for that brand because Leica is connected with their buyers, and Leica is very profitable. Even though on a technical side, they're really not particularly any better than any other camera system out there. So that's where OM Systems needs to improve. I'm not saying they're ever going to be a Leica, okay? But they need to improve, just like Fujifilm has really tapped into their user base and connected with their user base. That's where they need to improve the most. If they do that, it won't matter what the pixels are in the camera. And just increasing market share would be a bigger boost for me. Increasing market share and profitability is much more important than megapixels, because I don't think megapixels is going to help them in market share or profitability. If anything, trying to develop a high resolution sensor or a camera that uses a high resolution sensor is going to affect the bottom line in a negative way. I'd rather they be more profitable and have a bigger market share. Okay. Darko says, Eber Place I am visiting had kingfisher sightings. Rob, what are the techniques capturing a fast bird and skittish? Oh, man, a lot of patience. Man, I know I've sat there for 15 or 20 minutes going on and off on the Pro Capture like this. Because Pro Capture eventually stops, you know, it times out after a minute or two. So you have to wait like this. The other thing is, because a lot of times a kingfisher will just perch somewhere and then just dive and get a fish, you know? They're not like eagles and osprey where they circle around and then you can kind of watch them as they get ready to dive down. Kingfisher will just perch on a spot and just wait for the fish to come in sight, and then they'll go down. They don't tend to fly around looking for fish. So I sit there and I just wait. And then the other thing is, I don't know what the buffer capacity is in a D50 or whatever camera you're going to be using, but I would recommend, let's say finally the kingfisher takes off, right? So you're using the pre-capture or pro capture, or if you don't have that feature, you've captured the kingfisher flying off of the perch, right? Once you've captured that, don't just mash the shutter button, because you're going to hit your buffer and then the camera's going to slow down, and then you're going to miss the shot where he actually dives into the water and catches the fish. So you have to get really good at tracking when they jump off. Try and anticipate where they're going to jump to, and then so you got them jumping off the perch. You let go of the shutter button, and then you immediately push back down. But you let go, maybe 1 or 2 seconds. I wouldn't say immediately. But if it looks like they have to, if the trip is going to be a little bit longer to get down to catch the fish, then I would let go and then push again so that your buffer clears a little bit, and then you can catch him when he pulls the fish out of the water. So you have to be, it's just going to take a lot of practice and knowing your camera's limits. So with my OM1, I have a 90 frame buffer. So I set up a 10 frame pre-buffer or pro capture at 50 frames per second. I set up a 10 frame pre-capture, and then I burst as the kingfisher's, you know, diving and going down. Some kingfishers, they find a perch and then they can, I gotta turn this off. How do you, I'm so bad with, okay, there. So some kingfishers, they find a perch, say over running water, and they just wait for the fish to come down, and then they jump in and they come back to the same spot. They jump down and so they wait for the fish to come downstream, and they jump down and come up, and they jump down and come up. As opposed to if they're in a pond, right? They'll go up to a perch and they'll look around for where the fish is, and then you don't know exactly where they're going to dive to. They might dive over to the left side, to the right side, and you have to get really good at tracking. So, but yeah, get really good at burst, right? And have a lot of patience. That's what I would say. And Jeff says, don't forget the thumbs up, folks. Consider becoming a member. Oh, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. And Julia said, there was a recent rumor OM system releasing a TG8. I haven't heard that rumor. But that would be nice. I'll be curious to see what it comes out, what improvements they make. Because it is getting, honestly, the TG7 back to the TG5, 6, and 7, they're basically the same camera, just some minor differences in the firmware. But same sensor, same lens, same processor, across the board, same focusing system, everything, right? So it'd be nice to see a big improvement in the TG8. And thanks, Jeff. And interpolation, I doubt that they're taking, when we were talking about the 50 megapixel sensor, I doubt they're taking a 12 megapixel sensor and, you know, rescaling it to 50. I think the actual resolution is 50, but anyway, okay. Bellhaven was a favorite shooting grounds for my late brother. He often got great bird pics there. Oh, wow. So you're familiar with Bellhaven. Yeah, it's a great place. And the Gray Vanzini says, the body cap lenses don't seem great to me, but they are great fun to mess with. Yeah, so the 15, particularly the 15 millimeter body cap lens is great with using with the art filters, like the grainy art filter, grainy black and white film art filter, and a 15 millimeter body cap lens. You get sort of that vintage softness of old cameras plus the grain. That's a great combination. And Darko says, well, gang, hope the day finds you well. Got to head out in 10 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, Darko. I hope you're doing well, or have a good day, I should say. And good morning, Mr. Joe Black. Gosh, that was one of my favorite movies, I think. Meet Joe Black. That was a great movie. But good morning. Hopefully you don't have the same message for me as Joe Black did for Anthony Hopkins. And Anthony's apparently rumor has it that the new Canon R7 will be sporting a new 39 megapixel sensor, so I guess it's possible that we might see a 28 or 30 megapixel sensor for the next flagship. And the Canon APS-C is 1.6. It is not much bigger than Micro Four Thirds, so hopefully the new technology will see all new higher resolution sensor that will make everybody happy in the Micro Four Thirds world. Possibly, but Canon makes their own sensors. They don't rely on Sony. They have their own fabrication. So whatever they make doesn't translate to what might be available to us, to other camera manufacturers. And Fuji's take great pics at 24. My EP5 out a couple of weeks ago, and it was totally pleased with the outcome. I'm okay with 20 to 24. Yeah, I mean, most of us will agree. I think there's nothing wrong with a 16 or 20 or 24 megapixel image. They're all going to deliver more than enough resolution and results for most people. The concern is that, consumers are new consumers, new buyers, right, to digital cameras. Higher megapixels means newer technology. I mean, just to put it simply, right? And they don't want to buy old technology if they're going to spend, $1,000, $2,000 on a camera, because that's a major purchase for most people coming off a cell phone. And it is a big deal when you look at off the shelf. You have all the home system cameras capped at 20 megapixels, and then you see Canon going to 33 or 45 megapixels, and you see the well, let's stay in the same price range as OM Systems. You can see some 33 megapixel sensors from Canon in that price range of a 20 megapixel sensor from OM Systems. Nikon, same thing, right? And certainly Sony, they have 24 megapixel APS-C sensors. And of course, yeah, at that price point, they have 33 megapixel sensors as well. The A7C Mark II is a 33 megapixel full frame sensor for like 2,000, But anyway, so there, the air is, I forget how, what's his name, Craig put it, but the air gets pretty thin once you start getting to $2,000, right? There's a lot of competition. So I totally understand where Anthony's coming from in that, for OM Systems to look like it's progressing, they need to up the megapixels to generate new customers. And I don't disagree with that for the most part, except I don't think it's going to help them. You know, I think it'll certainly get people's attention, but I don't think it's really going to help them sell more cameras just because they now have 24, 28, 30 megapixels on a Micro Four Thirds. They're going to have to, like I said, connect with the buyers in a way that other companies like Fuji and Leica are doing. And Randall says, thank you for all the discussion about interesting, unique lenses for OM1. I do quite a bit of macro photography. Oh, okay. Happy to help. And I suspect the circular fisheye might be useful addition. Yeah, it's a fun little lens. And Marco disagrees. OM would definitely sell more cameras with higher megapixel sensor. Lots of savvy consumers make buying decisions on that spec. Oh yeah, so I just said that, right? It is kind of the hallmark or first thing a lot of consumers look at, like Marco said. But I guess I should say it more like I don't think it'll really move the needle for OM systems. And Marco says, can increase market share only catering to already small base. Need to expand any higher resolution would pull in new users if other specs and features aren't sacrificed. Yes. So yeah, like I was saying, it is a spec that a lot of consumers look at right off the bat, you know, off the shelf. You see 33 megapixel sensors, full frame, APS-C at the same price point as a Micro Four Thirds 20 megapixel sensor, right? But I don't think it's going to be enough, that alone. I hope I'm wrong. I would love it if they come out with a 30 megapixel sensor and it sells well. Is there any need for having 8K? I've been hearing that 7K, 6K is more than adequate. And once edited, most videographers have finished the product of 4K, and the 4K finished product is more than sufficient. So you're making the same argument between 20 megapixel and 24 megapixel sensors, right? For images. For video, it's the same thing. It's just another box to check. 8K video, right? Because yeah, 1080 is more than sufficient for me. I don't have any content that I've ever delivered to a client more than 1080. And I have a 1080 television. I don't even have a 4K television. Now, I use a 4K monitor for my video photo editing, but for my regular consumer consumption, you know, yeah, 1080 is more than good enough. To ask questions for conversation, I'm not a videographer, so I don't know is this information I heard correct or not. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what videographers do in general. Do they shoot in 8K, then downscale to 4K? Do they deliver 8K content? Ultimately, we'll probably all be at 8K, you know, TVs and content, but yeah, I don't know enough about it. And Adrian says, Kingfishers have a favorite perch to sit down and dive from. Find that and stay there until you get the better chance of getting an image. You need 1/4000th of a second. Yes. So yeah, that's what I was saying is, yeah, sometimes they'll find a spot and they'll just wait for the fish to come, and then the other perch, they'll stay perched there for a long time. That's been my observation, the limited experience I have with kingfishers. It lines up with exactly what Adrian is saying. Would videographers who use Micro Four Thirds camera systems be satisfied with a new camera that only got 7K capabilities versus 8K? I know Micro Four Thirds has limitations, especially when it comes to low light. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Rob, do you think OMD EM10 Mark IV is a good camera to get into Micro Four Thirds? No. I would get an OM5. I know it's significantly more. I mean, because you can buy the EM10 not right now. It's selling everywhere for like $700 with a lens or two. But I would get an OM5. You can buy an OM5 for $800 now, right? So that's where I would start, is the OM5 or OM5 Mark II. The EM10 is really long in the tooth. Doesn't have phase detect, and the OM5 is so much more capable with pre-capture, high-res shot mode, in-camera stacking. You know, it's just a much, much more capable camera than the EM10 IV. So I would go OM5. That's where I would start right now. And Mr. Joe Black, I'm just south of Baltimore. I don't have the same message. Oh, okay, good. Thank goodness. I should I shoot an EM5 Mark I. It's more than sufficient for large prints, yes. Low light sensitivity will help them more than more megapixels. They have to do it all, I think. They have to maintain a certain level of quality that they have now if they're going to increase megapixels. And OM Systems should send out a survey to all their OM1 users asking them what improvements do you want to see in the next flagship. I'm sure they do that now. They get, you know, they do get feedback, but uh, I don't see the point of going after the existing user base. We're going to generally buy their cameras, you know, with whatever improvements they make. May not be happy, but we'll still stay in the system like I will. I will always buy OM System for as long as they continue to sell cameras. I will continue to buy their cameras. Assuming they're not totally stagnant, but they have been making nice improvements. I really like the OM3. And the OM1, the OM1 Mark II, I just put those two cameras together. They're basically the same camera. Uh, I think those are really nice improvements. So if I have to wait another 4 years for a good OM system camera, I'll wait. It's okay. I'll always buy it. They need to go after new buyers, new customers, and hopefully the pen, if they come out with a pen camera, that might do it. And would like to see more megapixels to increase the ability to crop, just worry about diffraction and don't want to reduce the number of usable apertures. Yeah, so that's the other thing is, right, the diffraction, right? The higher the aperture you go, the more potential for diffraction. And this can be corrected a little bit. But when you have a pixel pitch, like I was going back to my early example, if you're trying to get a lens that can get get the wavelengths of light to go into a very, very small bucket, it's really hard to do. Howdy, Rob. Good to see you, Intrigue, or Eric. And I'm amazed that new product development by various camera companies is so controlled. Nothing seems to be leaked. Yes, they are pretty tight. And the only thing that comes out is what they want to come out, right? And the Great Vanzini says, my EM10 got very warm, so I sent it back and went with EM5s. No regrets. Yep. And Paul says, feel that OM systems are at the mercy of Sony and what sensor they develop. Yeah, for now. And for the foreseeable future, I guess, right? And it's not it's I mean, a lot of companies are at the mercy of what Sony can deliver. But Sony is also obligated or incentivized to keep developing new sensors, not only for their own camera division, but to resell to other camera manufacturers. So it's in their interest to keep developing new sensors, right? For if not consumer camera levels, but for industrial security, all that, and cell phones, right? And once they've developed the new technology in the sensor, they can, of course, upscale that to, or downscale it to any size that they need. So, it's not just OM Systems at the mercy, right? It's Nikon, Fuji. I don't know who makes Fuji sensors, but there's very few manufacturing facilities, fabrication plants that actually can develop a sensor in the mass quantities that you would need for a consumer level camera. And James, thank you so much, James. So happy to have you as a member. Thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. And Anthony says, when needed, I have used 8000 ISO on my new OM1 Mark II, and the photo quality was fantastic. I could not have done that on the EM1. Yes, there is a big difference between the original EM1, Mark I, and the OM1 Mark II. And Adam is here. Good to see you. Greetings from Central Illinois. Had great fun using my OM1 II with 12 to 100 and EP7 with 12 to 45 f4. Love the color settings until I decide to edit and have to decide JPEG or ORF edit and lose EP7 color settings. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll just use the straight out of camera JPEGs. I really like the art filter Pop Art and Pop Art 1 and 2 when I'm doing flowers and colorful scenes in nature. And it takes me a little bit of time to get as good an image post-processing, even with DxO Photolab, to get the kind of effect that I see out of my pop art filters. So I get where you're coming from. Like, let's see if I have an example here. So yeah, this is the pop art filter, and then this is the pop art filter. That I believe was the pop art filter. Oh no, I used Nick Collection on this one. I mean, these are pretty straightforward, but what but I get what you're coming from. The colors straight out of camera from the JPEGs that we get are a lot of times are really good, and if I got the exposure right, a lot of times I just use the straight out of camera JPEGs that I post to my Instagram. OM needs better advertising. To some extent, yeah. It's not just advertising, right? Like I said, they need to be able to connect somehow on a more emotional level with their buyers. Create some sort of something around them. And I think that'll take them a lot further. And Joe Black says, Sony makes the Fuji. Okay, so even Fuji's, at the mercy of whatever Sony develops. And the Grey Vanzini says, yes, I thought it was just me, but the ISO stuff seems to have greatly improved. No, it definitely has. There's a lot to do with it because it's not just the sensor, right? That's why I was always curious. And I think the Nikon Z50 Mark II is a good example of them basically using the same sensor since the D500, which was like more than 10 years ago, but just improving all of the electronics around it. So I would love to see, like, if they took the, like, I don't know why I have my photos up, thumbnails, but like if they took the sensor out of this E620 and then surrounded it with all new technology and used that and see how much better the image quality could be from this existing sensor. Now the sensor is going to have certain limitations like readout speed, but in terms of processing a single image, it would be interesting to see. I don't know if anybody's ever going to do that. But Nikon's done it. Sony's done it with their APS-C line. How long have they been using that 24 megapixel sensor? And all they've done is just rewired it so it works and surrounded it with new technology. But it's essentially the same sensor they've been using since the NEX7, which was a 24 megapixel APS-C. And James, thank you so much for the super chat. It says, I feel guilty it has taken me this long to join, so here's a little back tax. Oh, thank you. To make up for the lost time. You're the single best, oops, I lost the thing. Single best Micro Four Thirds resource on the internet. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you to say. I mean, I know some stuff. I think I wouldn't say I'm the best, but I'm certainly the most consistent, right? I am here just about every single week, several times a week, available to help people with their Micro Four Thirds. And I continue to use Micro Four Thirds despite having access to any camera I want, aside from say a Hasselblad. But you know what I mean. I can never, no other camera system has satisfied me or can do what I want it to do as well as the Micro Four Thirds system. You know, like I took this OM3 out yesterday, and even though ergonomically it's not ideal, I prefer taking my OM1 out for birding, but I took this out for birding. I can also pack in my macro. Last night I did an event with this, right? So I went from event photography in low light using flash to birding, bird in flight, and then doing macro work, all with this one camera. This does it all, and it does all of it extremely well, right? And better than a lot of camera systems in many cases. In my opinion, having 50 frames per second with pre-capture, or we call it pro capture, with pro capture and autofocus, right? Continuous autofocus, 50 frames per second with pro capture, pre-capture. No other camera system can do that I'm aware of. And shoot in RAW. And the lens is available. And then the same thing with focus bracketing and stacking in camera. I don't know too many other camera systems, if any, outside of Micro Four Thirds. Like Panasonic, I know will do that. But how many camera systems can do what the OM3 and the OM1 do? And give me the kind of images and quality that to me are just stellar. I mean, sure, you could take a Z8, throw on there, or a Sony A1 Mark II, throw on a 600 millimeter f4, and get stellar images, excellent autofocus, all of that stuff at a burst rate that's pretty decent. I think it's capped at 30, but whatever it is. But my God, that's a $20,000 system, right? If not more. And I can do the same thing at current prices. We're talking what? 2 for the camera, another 3 for the lens. So yeah, for $5,000, I can do it for $5,000. Let's say 6. Let's just round it up to $6,000. I can do everything a $20,000 camera, if not better. But okay, so I'm a fan. But thank you so much, James. Any opinion on the new OM1 Mark II infrared camera currently only in Japan? No, I haven't really looked at it. I saw the headline. I was like, oh, that's neat. I don't know how much it is, though. But if you'd like to do infrared photography, unlike the Astro camera that they released, I think the infrared camera makes a lot more sense. Because it's probably 20% more in price, but you're getting a brand new camera with warranty designed specifically for infrared. versus doing a conversion. And I think that makes a lot more sense. And I would have no trouble recommending that camera to anybody who wants to do infrared photography if you already like the Micro Four Thirds system. OM systems are such a small customer to Sony that there must be very limited opportunity to specify unique sensors. Yeah, I don't know what that relationship is between Sony and various manufacturers, right? I mean, who is their biggest customer? It's not Canon. Canon makes their own, so it'd have to be Nikon, and then Fuji, and then OM Systems, and then Panasonic. Um, I don't know if even Nikon could go to Sony and say, "We need a sensor that'll do this. Can you make one?" Like I said, I'm pretty sure Sony is cranking out the very best that they can. It's really up to Nikon, Fuji, OM Systems to do the processing, the hardware that goes around to driving the sensor. Um, Due to backside illuminated double stack sensor, the construction, I'm just trying to follow this thread. The construction of the stack sensor put the wires behind the surface, which increased the ISO sensitivity. Yes, so there's wires. There's wires going to every pixel, so you can put the wires behind the light sensitive part or in front. So it's very nominal, the difference between backside and regular sensors, but backside sensors have been around a long, long time. Cell phones have been using BSI sensors, otherwise known as BSI, backside illuminated. They've been using BSI sensors forever, long before consumer cameras really did. And because the pixel pitch is so small, putting a wire in front of a tiny pixel really can take away a lot of light. But in the larger APS-C and full frame cameras, the little tiny wire in front of the pixel, because the pixels, a while ago were much, much larger. There wasn't really an appreciable difference between BSI and regular sensors, because in larger sensors with larger pixels, the tiny wire didn't interfere with how much light was being gathered. But as the pixel pitch goes higher, yeah, you really would need BSI. Like in cell phone cameras, the pixel pitch is really high because they have a tiny sensor and then they have 50 megapixels, right? So you can't have a bunch of wires in front of those tiny pixels. The Great Vanzini says, if they focus on street, they would get at least some new customers. Absolutely. Absolutely, I agree with that. And Anthony says, I think they were going to bring out a new flagship with only 25 megapixels of resolution, an all more powerful image processor, improved dynamic range, and improved low light capability. Well, that would be very exciting, right? Everything's better, more megapixels, better dynamic range, better low ISO performance, or high ISO performance, low light capability. Yeah, that would be awesome. I would buy that in a heartbeat. But I'm an existing customer. I don't know if a new customer would be as excited. The EP7, because like I said, a lot of off-the-shelf stuff are 24 to 33 megapixels at the same price point. The E7 has all those silly color settings like the OM3 and PenUp, but they just don't always hit the same depending on the scene. DxO does a great job carrying in stock filters from Fuji on the RAW files. Yep. Yeah, the color settings I never got into. I tried, of course I got into messing with the color settings But all it does is really mess with the saturation of individual colors. But if that color is not in the scene, then it's not going to make any difference. And that would be enough to excite the Micro Four Thirds community. Yeah, the existing Micro Four Thirds community, exactly. I just don't know if it'd be enough to move the needle to get new customers. I don't know. And good morning, Michael. Good to see you. And Sony has 60 megapixel sensor for many years, which they've had in their cameras and have never made it available for the competition. Uh, I don't know. I mean, Leica's using the 60 megapixel sensor, right? In their SL3. Yeah, the Leica SL3 has the 60 megapixel. But outside of that, I can't think of anybody directly. That's true. Okay. And Adam says, I just found the tagline for Rob Drake t-shirt. I'm not the best, but I know some stuff. Yeah, that's funny. And Rob, yesterday I made 60-second long exposure using the Live ND and K&F ND polarizer filter at noon sunny day. What other systems let you do that? Uh, yeah, I don't know anybody else that has Live ND, that's for sure. And the K&F, anybody can buy a K&F filter, but yeah. And the Great Vanzini says, such a small niche infrared. It is small, but I'm glad they're doing something, right? They've released two very niche cameras, right? In addition to their normal lineup. So they're not doing nothing, and they're not simply, because this was talked about a lot when OM Systems took over. They're just a private equity firm. They're going to chop it up and sell it off in pieces, right? And they're going to sell it, fire sale everything off the shelf and get out of business. But it doesn't seem to be the case. By introducing these two new cameras, the Astro OM3 and the infrared OM1, and the release of the 50 to 200. So they are doing a lot of things that would, I say, debunk the initial fears that the private equity firm was just going to chop up and sell off all of the Olympus stuff. Rob, do you think a global shutter sensor would attract more customers? Certainly be a lot of eyeballs, right? But I don't think we're there yet. It would certainly bring a lot of attention to home systems, and certainly people are going to buy it. But I don't know. Right now, Sony's the only one with a global sensor right now, right? Certainly a new Pen F would sell more. Yeah, I think it would sell awesome. A new Pen F, definitely. And Anthony says, with these new software programs, such as DxO PhotoLab 9.6 and the new camera with small all-around improvements, would make camera look like it was really significant improvements overall. So I'm not sure I understand what you meant there with software help from DxO. So are you suggesting that DxO tried to collaborate with OM Systems to develop better image quality straight out of camera? And that would be interesting. I don't know if that can really be done, Could be a big no-go, I think. Okay. Let me talk about a couple other things real quick, because I meant to come back to this DP review. So you go to DP Review's site, right? And then you go over here to sample images. And down here they have studio scene comparison. So this is a good starting point, right? Oh, is this going to load or not? Okay, there we go. So I like to pick the low light scene. And then I'm going to pick two cameras. So let's pick the OM1. Do they have the Mark II in here? No, they have the OM3 though, right? They have the OM3, and we're going to take the Panasonic G9 Mark II. Come on, that's here it is. So let's go to, oh, how come the RAW is not RAW? Can this go any higher? Okay, so let's just say 25,000, right? RAW 25,000. G9 Mark II. Something's not adding up here. There we go. So I'm going to expand this out. And let's go over to so here's the OM3 at ISO 25,000 and the G9 Mark II at ISO 25,000. But the G9 Mark II is a 25 megapixel sensor versus the 20 megapixel. Now at this high ISO, which one do you think looks sharper to you? To me, this clearly looks sharper. I can clearly see the number 20 here. Over here, it's a little, it's just noisier, right? Let's go to another part of the scene, like here. If you ask me, again, I can see the eyes and the nose here on this king much better than I can over here. Let's try something else. How about a white space? Excuse me. Again, I think this looks less noisy here on the left. So this is what I mean about there is a very, very minor compromise. As you make the pixel pitches smaller and smaller, you're going to get noisier and noisier images at the pixel level. Now let's look at base ISO 200. So let's go to the hair. So if I were to crop in to a bird photo, am I really getting that much more detail from this versus this? I just don't see it. Ultimately, there will be more detail because there's more pixels. But in practice, I mean, just imagine this is a bird sitting here. You know, you have this entire scene and you're going to crop into this little bird. How about, let's go over here. This is a little easier for our eyes to see. So I would say right here, I can easily read, you know, to serve as a compass in most, right? And then over here, it's a little bit harder to read. So this is a good example where I can see the difference in resolution. the Panasonic G9 II has better resolution than the OM3 because it has 25 megapixels. And that's when I'm looking at this. I can definitely read this a little bit easier than this one. And if we're talking about here, I can read this line. I can read right here pretty clearly. So although in temperate climates this is varied. So over here I can read it just as easily, actually. So on this particular patch, I can read both pretty easily, but I will say this is just a little bit sharper. Okay, let's go back up to ISO 25,000. Well, let's say 12,000. I rarely have bird photos at 25,000. Mostly they're at 12,800 if I'm going to have a high ISO. So I can clearly read this. Bodies, it is impossible for us to, right? And over here, this is literally impossible to read. So at the higher ISO, because we have slightly larger pixels, we're getting less noise, which is creating less interference with the detail. Let's go over here to the brighter part. So I would say I can easily read, like I can read the word determine the over here, but here I can't read it at all. But over here I can make out some of the words on this sentence. Determine the north in the view or the way, but over here I can read the word but a little bit. Yeah. And then let's go down to where's the Fujifilm? The Fujifilm has an even finer pixel pitch, right? Even though it's APS-C. Here's an X-T5. So yeah, this one I can read pretty well. Easier than this side, but not by much. I mean, ultimately, there's not that much difference in noise. But that high resolution, you know, it's significantly higher, right? The resolution. So anyway, you guys go to the DP Reviews site and you can try all these different combinations as a baseline to, you know, as a starting point to your research. You know, I do it just out of academic curiosity. I don't, you know, it doesn't matter to me because a camera is much more than just the sensor resolution, right? It's everything else it can do. It's the form factor, the lenses, the entire system, etc., etc. But you know, even from an academic point of view, it's clear to me that going from 20 to 25 megapixels is not going to make any difference in the quality of images that I get, unless I can shoot a bird in flight photo at base ISO, right? Which is never the case. I'm usually shooting bird in flight at ISO 3200, 6400 is very, very typical for me, and I think for most birders, right? And shooting at higher ISO and then cropping in, you can see that even though it's a high resolution camera, and we can see the difference at base ISO, but as you raise the ISO, you get actually better detail on the lower resolution camera at higher ISOs than you do the high resolution camera at higher ISOs. From what I could see there, right? Okay. And the Great Vanzini says, true, but a lot of folks don't care for editing. Yes. And do you think OM Systems' goal is people new to non-phone photography or to new photographers? Why is one of the consistently largest seller Kodak Pix Pro priced? Sure, but fun factor too. So, these little trends like these little toy cameras, these are things parents buy for their little kids. So there's a lot of sales going that way. But this is not, you have to sell in such a volume. I don't know. I don't see, OM Systems right now does not have a camera. You could argue the EM10, but they don't really have a camera for people that are going from their cell phone to buy into their system, right? Unless they want to buy the OM5 Mark II, which is an awesome camera. I want to get it actually, if I can trade in my EM5 Mark III, but the, I think the Pen series is about the closest thing they'll get to something like a Pixel Pro, right? Because a pen style camera can be a little bit vintage looking, but then have, the modern technology and the much larger sensor. It depends on how they market it though, right? They need to market the pen in a way that connects with the buyers on an emotional level somehow, right? Because just releasing a pen camera or a Pen F camera, existing users like the Pen F Mark II, existing users like myself will just take my money. We'll buy it, right? Because we have a certain nostalgia and connection with that camera. But the new pen camera, I I have to see what it is. I may or may not buy it. But they have to market it in a way that connects. And Adam says, I keep seeing mention of DxO PhotoLab 9.6. If you haven't opened the editor for a bit, they are at 9.7. They also have updated NIC and the film pack in the last month or so, as well as 9.7 was recent. Yeah, so I am using 9.7, and the NIC collection, I don't know if there's been an update. I'll have to check. I did see an email about something going on with NIC. You'd think I'd be a little bit more on top of things being an affiliate. Let me see, DxO. DxO is on 8.2. So updated version 8.2. I think that's what I'm using. I don't pay. I use NIC collection time to time, and when it says update, I just update. I don't really pay attention to what the changes are because I do most of my editing in PhotoLab. But you can use NIC collection almost as a full photo editor all by itself. It just doesn't have the deep prime and stuff, right? Adrian says, have to go. Have a great day. Okay, Adrian, thanks for coming in today. And Mr. Joe Black says, I don't want to carry a large bag full frame sensor in the Smithsonian for street photos. I agree 100%. I mean, maybe if the body was small enough, but I'm not sure which ones are worth it with the lens size. Yeah, I mean, if you want a zoom lens, just about any full frame zoom is pretty big. The 24 to 70 range, right? Panasonic with the S9 has a pretty compact 18 to something, right? Is it an 18 to 40? I forget. They have a pretty compact zoom. So the S9 is about as compact as a full frame camera system as you can get that has a compact lens. But I can't speak to the image quality or the quality of that lens camera combination. It's probably fine. Maybe I'll pick one up. 'Cause they're on sale now for like 1,300 bucks, right? But that's the thing, right? Uh, this thing is pretty compact and small. This is, yeah, it's an 18 to 40. I mean, I imagine this is not any bigger than my OM3 with 12 to 45. But this camera is nowhere near as capable photography-wise as my OM3. Not even close. Okay, just tuning in. Stuart, how are you? Picked up the camera first time in 8 weeks after a long hospital stay. Oh, I hope your wife is doing better. Um, but yeah, it's good to get out with a camera. I mean, I was so happy to get out the last couple of weeks because the weather permitting, and the weather has been very permitting. It's been great. So what is drawing you to the OM5? Oh, the sand beige color specifically. I just like how it looks. So I'm thinking if I can get the sand beige, uh, and it's going to be a faster camera than my EM5 Mark III with better autofocus. Technically, it's very similar, right? The autofocusing system between the EM5 Mark III and the OM5, but the OM5 has the newer, better autofocusing system and algorithms, and that's playing a minor point. The main thing is that sand beige color, and the styling's a little different. And if I can trade in my EM5 Mark III, maybe I'll get 200 or 300 for that. Then I think I would enjoy using it or have fun taking it out. Because right now, what do I have? I have my OM3 and my OM1, but it's a little bulky to take both of these together. What I'd like to do, how I see myself using it in a way that I can't really do with my EM5 Mark III, is taking out my OM3 or OM1 with my OM5 Mark II as a pair when I go out in the field. Then I'll have two very, very capable cameras. That's how I see it. Uh, so I don't know. I have to look into it. I just love the sand beige color. Because I know like Marco, he traded his silver OM5 Mark I for the OM5 Mark II in sand beige, and for no other reason other than the color, right? And Mr. Joe Black asks, what software and hardware do you use for digital asset management? I don't use any. I just organize my basically a chronological order on my hard drive is my cataloging system. And then every year I just back it up to a separate hard drive. So I have two copies of everything. But I don't really use any kind of digital asset management. Those kind of systems, the DAM stuff, uh, it's better suited for people that have to catalog their systems, that are selling it and licensing their photos out on a regular basis. So when somebody comes to them, whether it's through their agency or directly, right, and says, I need a photo of what this street looked like in 1985, you can go to your asset management and find it like this, right? Because you have a good cataloging system, you have good backup system, et cetera, et cetera. It makes a lot more sense for people that are need to find their stuff quickly for clients. Maybe it's a wedding photo, you know. Uh, but for me, I don't, I take pictures of birds, landscapes, architecture, and I don't really sell any of it or license it out. So I just back it up, and the pictures I really, the pictures that I like, for the most part, I upload to Flickr. And if all my hard drives crash tomorrow, it's okay. My photos aren't that important, right? I have my family photos and things in JPEG form that I've uploaded to Flickr into a private folder, of course. And then I have uh, all my other stuff, Instagram and Flickr, to upload. Once it's uploaded and I've taken the picture, lesson learned, I do it for the enjoyment of the photography. I'm not doing it trying to make money off of it. But if I was a serious photographer and needed a dam system, then you know I would have some sort of dam system if I was more serious about my photography and licensing stuff out. But I'm not doing that. Sand just looks cool and great to use. I agree. And you should pay your $1,000 in the saving account for that 150 to 400. You would think, right? You would think. But let's, right now I have the 300 with the 1.4 teleconverter, so I'm at 420 millimeters. The 150 to 400 will get me to 500. And in terms of image quality, I think the general consensus is that my 300 f4 is giving me the same image quality as the 150 to 400 will. So, and I'm not really getting that much more reach with the 150 to 400, and I don't care about the zooming at all. I'm fine with just having a prime fixed focal length. So what does the 150 to 400 really bring to the table for me, right? Very, very little. I mean, if the lens was under 5,000, I could maybe start to think about saving up for it. Maybe. I mean, honestly, if it was 5,000, it would be 2 to 3 years for me to get it. I could put it on a credit card, but it would still take me 2 to 3 years to pay that down, right? Plus interest. Usually around 3%, because you know how 3 or 4%. I paid probably 3 or 4% over 2 or 3 years to buy that lens. That's a chunk of change. I don't know. Whereas an OM1 or an OM5 in sand beige, I would end up paying less than 1,000, and I could pay that off in 6 months, right? And I would get more than 2 or 3 years use out of it. So I don't know. But I get where you're coming from. Why spend money on all these things I don't need, and when I could be putting it towards something I really want? So I do that with my O1 Mark II and 100 to 400, and take the OM5 II with a wide angle, great combo when outbirding. Yep, that's kind of what I had in mind, right? Like I could have a secondary lens, like the 12 to 45 or something, and then I have my 300 f4 on my OM1. That's what I'd like to do. And Whiplash says, do you have any software to call your photos? Lehoy mentioned something, can't remember. No, I don't use anything to call it. I just, like I could come back easily with 2 or 3,000 images, sometimes more, from a birding event, or when I'm out birding. I'm really fast. I'll find, like, I'll go through the thumbnails. After I've loaded them on my computer, I can just look at the thumbnails and I can see a point where the bird grabbed the fish. And then what I'll do is I'll just block the 5 or 10 pictures around that one image and delete the rest in that sequence. So, and I'll just go down, and in like 15 minutes to 30 minutes, I can call 3 to 4,000 images very quickly if it's bird in flight type stuff. For other types of things like event photography, I typically take 200 to 500 images at a small event, and those are pretty easy to call through. 2 to 500 images is a piece of cake. manually. But let me see if I still have. I may have already called them. Yeah, I know this day, like this is, I'm down to, Huntley Meadows. I probably took 2 or 3 thousand images this day. I've already called them. This was from last week. But you can see I kind of blocked off this sequence. I blocked off this sequence. And I blocked off some sequence here. But I'm very, very quick. I blocked off a couple of different sequences here. And I've already deleted the rest. Let me see. Burnside was not one. Riverbend. Oh, backyard birding. I think I've already called these. Yeah, 59 images. And then I did this event. I only took 185 images. And then I've already called these down to 29 images. And I'll probably only deliver about maybe 15 or 16 images out of these 185 that I took. Because it's typical, I'll take like 3 shots. Like, if somebody has their eyes closed, I'll say 1, 2, 3, we're going to take 3 shots. And I'll take 3 pictures of the same thing, right? Sometimes only 2, because, I want to make sure everybody's eyes are open. And I'll call through these very, very quickly. Then a couple of table shots, and that's it. And let's see, this one. Oh, this is from yesterday. I have not culled these images yet. I'm almost done. But I took 1,392 images here. And I've culled them down to these 33. And that's it. But if I uncheck this, you can see, like, I can easily delete all of these, These are, and this one here, this is a butt shot, so I don't need that one. So I can click here, go all the way down this entire sequence, down to about here, and just delete these like that. So I just deleted 78 images. But I don't typically do it that way. I typically select the ones that I want and then just delete the rest. I don't delete them like 50 or 60 at a time like that. I delete them. I try to pick 50 or 60 images and then I delete the other 1,000, 2,000. And thank you for the info about them. Oh, you're welcome. And oh, good morning, Robert. Good to see you. And the sand beige is such a beautiful color. I think it's probably worth it. I know, right? I'm like, I would just love to have it. Like, I love this. Like, I didn't need an EM1 Mark 1, but I just love this silver implementation because this one has the silver buttons and dials, not just the silver body. So I like this one. I got it for like 250 bucks. It was a good deal. My wife doesn't need nail polish, but it's pretty, so I keep putting money into it. Right. So, wow, I just wouldn't have the patience. Oh, if you're talking about my calling, it's not hard. Like I said, because a lot of times what I'll do is, while I'm in the field, I'll scroll through the images that I just took, and I'll put a little asterisk in camera, because you can do that, I think it's the record button. No, well, on this one, it's the function button. On the OM1, it's the ISO button. I'll be going through, and if I see one I like, I just hit that button or this button. And I'll put a little star on it in camera so that when I import the images, I can very quickly find the ones that I liked while I was in the field. And then I'll just scroll through. I mean, it's so easy. Like here, I got 1,314 images, right? This is so easy to call through. So I can look at this one and this one. I don't like that one. He's looking away. And I can see from the thumbnails which ones he's looking away and which ones he's looking at the camera. So I can tell this one is, so I already started this one and this one. So I can easily, you know, and I just go through. This one's okay, so I'll star that one. And I'll scroll down. I don't like any of these. I did like this one, so I made a star. And then, you know, you get through them very, very quickly. Like I only kept this one. This entire sequence, I don't need this. Right? I can just, I start a couple other ones I want to consider. It's really not hard at all. Mr. Joe Black says, yeah, I'm looking at the EM1 Mark II in silver. I looked at that too. What I didn't like about the EM1 Mark II was that the buttons up here on the top were in black. So this was purely a cosmetic purchase, or, you know, it had nothing to do with I needed this camera or like this camera in particular, other than it was the first EM1. So it's kind of unique that way. But the EM1 Mark II is certainly a much better camera. I know Jimmy likes his in silver. But I just like the look and feel of this one a little bit better. It's just a little bit smaller. Okay. But yeah, I don't know how many pictures do you take when you come back from a shoot. If it's like a street photo shooting, you know, you probably less than 200. That's about all I get if I do any street photography. But when I do birding, I could easily get 2,000-3,000 images. In this case, I only had 13 or 1,400. But let me see the day before. Day before, I took 300 images. But that's RAW plus JPEG, so it's like 150. And day before that, 400 images. But a lot of that is RAW plus JPEG, so again, about half that. So it looks like when I go out, when I'm not doing birding, I typically take 200 images or less. If I'm doing birding, then it could be 2,000 images. It's smaller than the Mark in. I did not know that. I'm not sure what you mean. The M1 Mark I is smaller than the M1 Mark II, if that's what you mean. And Hiker Dude says, did you see the Petapix article 2 days ago about Insta360 making an M43 camera? No, I didn't see that. It wouldn't surprise me, though, because they've been sending, you know, the Insta360 out to all these Micro Four Thirds people like myself and Emily. You know, asking us to make videos about their Insta360 camera as a photography camera, not as an action camera, right? They said, you know, it's an action camera, but we'd like you to emphasize the photographic capabilities, you know, with the new grip and different things it has. I said, okay, you know, that was the email to me. And what is Ellie yapping about? Oh, I have to go. Okay, guys. You guys, I might be able to take care of this. Hold on 1 second. I'll be right back. Let's take a 1 minute break. Sorry about that. I had to get the door, unfortunately. Anyhow, what were we talking about? The Petapixel article. So I hadn't seen anything recently, but it doesn't surprise me at all. I think I even talked about this in a stream last month where I said, why is Insta360 sending a bunch of Micro Four Third people and other influencers, right, creators on YouTube, and asking them to sell it as a street photography camera? And to me, they were doing market research for developing an actual Micro Four Thirds camera. So if they do that, I wouldn't be surprised. Because it makes sense. Because, you know, the Insta360, they sell the little grip with it. And I really like it. I took it with me to the event yesterday. I ended up not using it. But it's a great little camera to take to events as well. And but if they, wow, if they could somehow take the technology that they use in the Insta360 and make it into a Micro Four Thirds camera, they will have a killer camera that will sell, that will fly off the shelf, in my opinion. Because the capabilities that Insta360 has, pretty amazing. And Whiplash says, thanks for the calling tips. Photo Mechanic is the software. Okay. I've heard that before. Yeah, people use that a lot. I'm just very liberal with what I delete. Like, I swear, a couple of days ago, I found a folder that it was about 6 years old, and it had 1.2 terabytes of photos on it. So I went through a few of the folders, and I looked at some of the images in each folder. Like, I spent like literally 2 minutes. I said, you know, I haven't looked at this folder in 6 years. I just deleted it. After I looked at a few images, I said, this, all right, never mind. If I haven't looked in the photos in 6 years, I'm not going to look at them ever. So I just deleted 1.2 terabytes of photos. I was a little surprised when I deleted the folder that I freed up 1.2 terabytes on my hard drive. I didn't think it was that much. So I'm kind of second guessing myself. Wow, 1.2 terabytes. Might have been some videos in there. I don't know. But, you know, the folder had the date, you know, January, February of 2000, something like that. And I was like, I haven't looked at this folder in 6 years. And I peeked at a few of the thumbnails. There was only about 5 folders altogether. I said, I don't think there's anything here I want. I just purged it. So I'm very, very liberal with what I delete. Like I said, my I don't feel like my photography is that important to anybody, right? And it's certainly not that critical to me. I do it because I enjoy going out and taking the photos. The photos themselves are kind of the end result of that. But that's not the part I enjoy the most. What I enjoy the most about photography is getting out there and doing it, right? And then seeing what can I capture. And then once I've captured that image, I'm like, wow, this is really awesome. Look at how much detail I can get. Look at how I was able to freeze the action. Look at the moment that I caught, you know, a lot of these things. And if I like the photo, I'll upload it to Flickr. Otherwise, yeah, it's gone. It's deleted. Especially now that hard drives and memory is so expensive, right? So Lee Hoy uses Photo Mechanic. Okay, I'll have to look into that. And do you have a favorite 0.95 lens for Micro Four Thirds? No. Yeah, I've used the 35.95, the 25.95, but the problem with the lens is the 35.95 is not too big and bulky. I did like using that a little bit, but I don't recommend anybody buy that lens because it's not it has a problem with it that it's not going to work on a lot of cameras. It'll work at first, but then it's going to stop working later. It has something to do with you know, how it. Just try. I'm not recommending the 25.95 is much more interesting lens, but I don't have a need to shoot in that low light, right? Where I would need a 0.95 for the light, and the depth of field is just so shallow. It's just easier to just use a regular autofocus lens. I don't know of any 0.95 lenses that are autofocus. But I think the Voigtlander 17 is pretty close to 0.95. That might be an interesting lens to use. But I don't have too much interest in 0.95 lenses just because they're so big and bulky. I'm too much of a pack rat. Yep. So Lee Hoy uses Photo Mechanic. I've never used it, but that sounds right. Okay, so I'm gonna call it here. You guys, thank you so much for joining me today. It's great seeing all of you. I will be back on Tuesday for more shopping, looking for deals, and answering questions as usual. And then I'll be back on Friday for photo editing. So you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Have a good day. Do that every day. You'll have a good life. Eat healthy and exercise. And